For the next few weeks, we're going to be learning about poetry. Poetry comes in many different forms. Some poems rhyme, some poems don't rhyme. We will learn about all the different types of poems later, but for right now, we need to learn some basic vocabulary of the structure of a poem. So if you don't know this, a rhyme is when the two end sounds of two different words sound similar or the same. Before we begin, you need to take a moment and copy down this basic limerick poem called Hickory, Dickory, Dock. So take a moment and write it down. Now that you have this poem written down, let's read over it. It says, Hickory, Dickory, Dock. The mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck one. The mouse ran down. Hickory, Dickory, Dock. There are some basic vocabulary that we need to go over. First of all, one row in a poem is called a line. So if you look here, there is one line, two lines, three lines, four lines, and five lines. Okay, and a line is simply a line. Now, sometimes you get a group of lines. In this case, this is one grouping of lines. We call that a stanza. A stanza is a group of lines that are paired together, that are separated from the rest of the poem. So a stanza is a division that contains a certain number of lines. So a stanza has more than one line. Generally, it has about 2 to 4 lines. So this is a group of lines. Now let's talk about the rhyme. Now we know that when two words sound the same at the end, it rhymes. In this case, Hickory, Dickory, Dock. The mouse ran up the clock. What two words rhyme in those two lines? You're right, the words dock and clock. And because those two sound similar, we are going to label these lines our A lines. Now, let's look at the next two lines. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down. Now, it doesn't have to rhyme perfectly. It can be a near rhyme. In this case, one and down are very similar in sound. We're going to call those our B lines. And then our last line, Hickory, Dickory, Dock, which line does that rhyme with? You're right, it's back up to the A line. We call this our rhyme scheme. A rhyme scheme is a pattern of rhymes. We've learned what patterns are. Oops. For instance, a star, a heart, a star, a heart. What should come next in this pattern? You're right, it's going to be a star again. Well, with a rhyme scheme, it's very similar to that, only in this case, it's the rhyme. So this dock and clock have the same sounding word. So we're going to call those A, our A rhyme. One and down would be our B. A for dock rhymes back up with the top again. So if we were to start a new stanza, it probably would be similar to Hickory, Dickory, Dock, and then it would be something different. But every pair of lines that rhyme, you will label them either A, B, and if it's a brand new, you can keep going up in the alphabet. So you can have C rhymes and D rhymes. But in this case, right now with what we're doing, we know that this rhyme scheme goes A, B, B, A. So if we were to continue, it would be A, B, B, A again. So most poems have the same rhyme pattern throughout the entire poem. So there's something else that's really interesting in this particular poem, and that's the use of what we call repetition. Repetition is when the same word or group of words is used over and over again. Do you notice anything in this poem that is used over again? You're right. Hickory, dickory, dock. It's actually repeated twice. This is an example of repetition. And if you remember, repetition is any words or phrases that repeat over and over again throughout your poem. So, any word or phrases oops, here I go, phrases that repeat. Now, there's one more important vocabulary word that we have to learn, and that's what we call meter. Now, I'm not talking, well, it's kind of like a measurement, but not the kind of measurement that we use in math. Meter is actually has to do with two things. It has to do with syllables in each line, and it also has to do with the emphasis that you put on the certain words in that line. So meter has to do with syllables in each line. So if you're writing a poem and you want your poem to sound right, you have to make sure that you have nearly the same amount of syllables in each line. So let's look at this. Hickory is 3 syllables, dickory is 3 syllables, and dock. So this line has 7 syllables. The next line, the mouse ran up the clock, had 6. The clock struck 1, that's 4. The mouse ran down, that's 4. So notice the lines that rhyme have nearly the same amount of syllables. Hickory, dickory, dock, which is 7 again. And this is because the meter in this limerick sounds very similar to a song. It reads like a song. And I think some people have actually turned this into an actual song. But meter, so when you're writing a poem and you want the meter to sound correct, you need to make sure that every line that rhymes has nearly the same amount of syllables. It can be off around 1 or 2 syllables, but it should be pretty close. So meter is syllables. So let's spell that out. Hickory. 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 That's 3 syllables. 1, 2, and 3. Hickory. Dickory, dock, for a total of 7 syllables. So we know now that a line is one row of words in a poem. A stanza is a group of lines in a poem, kind of like a paragraph, isn't it? A rhyme scheme is the pattern of words that rhyme, and I like to label it with letters A, B, B, A. And then repetition is any groups of words that rhyme. Any groups of words that are repeated reoccurringly throughout your poem. Almost like a song. The chorus in a song gets repeated a number of times. It's the same idea. And then finally, the meter of a poem is the syllables within every line. And it gives it a rhythm, almost like a song. So syllables in each line. Ooh, I like that word, rhythm. We should put that in there, shouldn't we? Rhythm. So, you have learned 5 new poetry vocabulary words. On Wednesday, we're going to learn a little bit more, but rather, instead of the structure of a poem, we're going to focus more on the meaning of a poem.